evolution of the motor car marks one of the most groundbreaking developments in the history of mankind. Since the first conceptual inklings drawn up by Leonardo da Vinci, through to the introduction of steam, electric and diesel-powered vehicles, the motor car has completely transformed our way of life. Amongst the many British names that have paved the way for the modern motor, there are a few that highlight a particularly glorious period in Britain's car-making history and make up a fine range of classic collectibles. During the halcyon days of British motor manufacturing, names such as Daimler, Bentley and Rover were all earning their iconic status, with character, class and calibre being the order of the day. British-made, yet world-famous models such as the Jaguar E-Type and Rolls Royce cars all made their appearance, and today they encapsulate the uniqueness and aptitude of Britain's most glorious motoring era. For many, the classic car has become an all-time passion. Some people find their hobby by investing in one collectible, some acquire a whole range of models, and others make it their lifelong allegiance. The latter was certainly true for people like Frederick Henry Royce, Charles Rolls and Sir William Lyons, to name but a few founding names of the great classic car manufacturers. The story of how such people came to establish the great companies of this special era make this topic even more fascinating. Take for example Frederick Royce and his climb to success, starting off life as the son of an impoverished miller to become a leader of one of the world's most famous car manufacturing businesses. The story of Frederick Royce certainly demonstrates one of rags to riches. His business partner, Charles Rolls, on the other hand, had a completely different background. Son to Lord and Lady Llangattock, Rolls was born into a life of wealth and luxury. Who could have foreseen the remarkable result when these two men crossed paths? But not all of the great marques, such as Rolls-Royce, remain today, and over the years some have merged together or been taken over by other companies. This was true in the case of Bentley, although the circumstances of how this happened are somewhat intriguing. Having fallen into serious debt, Bentley Motors was set for takeoff by Napier, a company Walter Bentley himself had been in talks with concerning a new sports car. However, before the deal had been finalised, an unknown bidder made an offer of over £20,000. This was a hefty sum for the early 1930s, and one that couldn't be refused. But who was the anonymous buyer? It's believed that this was revealed to Walter Bentley during a cocktail party, where his wife happened to overhear a conversation. The mystery buyer turned out to be Rolls Royce. These are just a couple of the fascinating stories behind Britain's motoring legacy, and there are plenty more to discover. As a true celebration of this famous classic car heritage, there's a superb collection of cars lined up, waiting for your attention. All that's left for you to do now is to sit back and enjoy the great British classics. When it comes to British sports car manufacturing, there's one name that cannot go unmentioned, and that's MG. One of MG's most renowned sporting numbers, a highly successful model on both sides of the Atlantic, was the MGA. This is an early model from 1956, and it's a fairly new investment. The collector previously owned another of MG's classic creations, an MG TD Midget, but swapped it a year ago for this much-loved all-time classic. Featuring a 1500cc engine, this superb example usually takes to the road at least once a week, and has undergone a slight refurbishment project to get it into tip-top shape. The sleek MGA series first appeared in 1955, however it was many years before this time that the company had made its initial impact on the motoring scene. Cecil Kimber, the founder of MG, developed a passion for motor vehicles at an early age, and was destined to make his own contribution to the industry. Racing motorbikes, becoming assistant to the chief engineer at Sheffield Simplex, then moving on to AC Cars, Kimber went through a series of jobs before working for William Morris. During his time working at the Morris garages, Kimber produced the first MG model. Although there was very little to distinguish the Morris and MG cars apart at first, Kimber soon developed a sporting edge that would go on to grab global recognition. Like most of the great British marques of the classic car-making era, things didn't always go to plan for MG. War, financial worries, and business disagreements all played their part. Nevertheless, MG produced some excellent models, finding a particular niche in producing neat little two-seater sports cars. It was with the advent of the MGA that the company stepped into a new and very modern era of styling. Post-war MG cars had previously looked like restyled pre-war models, but with the masterful designs of Sidney Eniver, this was all about to change. Doing away with its previous square-shaped looks, a more curvaceous and lower-sitting body was created. Not only did these features enhance the car's sporty appearance, but the low centre of gravity also made it very nimble and easy to handle on corners. Even so, the old MG design methods of using a separate chassis and detachable front door side screens for open-top models were still maintained. In fact, the public had already been given an indication of what MG were planning 4 years before the MGA actually arrived, when George Phillips had driven a rebodied TD Midget in the 1951 Le Mans race. The appearance was so different to that of the original TD Midget, it was almost unbelievable to imagine that it was the same car underneath. MG proposed that a road-going version of this car would be a suitable replacement for the fading TD Midget, but BMC, MG's parent company at the time, chose to concentrate on building the Austin Healey 100 instead. The TF Midget went on to replace the TD, although it soon became apparent that this wasn't enough to impress the public, hence the MGA was released. The model's new and fresh style was very well received, and a coupe version, which became standard in 1956, was available throughout the MGA's production. The coupe carried off the good looks of the open top perfectly, even mimicking its soft top profile. The MGA's exquisite appearance was equally matched by its performance, taking its engine from the new BMC B series, with a cubic capacity of nearly 1500 cc's. A top speed of 98 miles per hour was achievable. However, this was soon improved upon with the advent of the MGA twin cam in 1958. With 108 brake horsepower and a 1.6-litre engine, the new MGA variant could reach 113 miles per hour. As the performance statistics suggest, the twin cam wasn't designed to be an everyday runaround and was essentially aimed for competition use. Other mechanical refinements included four-wheel disc brakes, uprated suspension, and special centre-locking steel disc wheels. In theory, the twin cam should have been a bestseller. However, an expensive price tag, along with a reputation for unreliability, meant that the plan to make 2,500 of these models was not followed through. With the proposed production figure falling short by almost 400, MG decided to use the leftover car parts in an exclusive deluxe MGA Mark II model. Only one major factor distinguished the Mark II from the normal twin-cam model, and that was the engine. Today, the deluxe variant is highly sought after. Next to come in the MGA range was the 1600. Brakes were improved from the original model, with discs to the front wheels, whilst drums remained to the rear. New front lights were also fitted, and the windows now featured sliding perspex. During production of the 1600, MG was facing tough competition from its rivals, most significantly Triumph, who were also offering an attractive sports car package in their TR range. The MGA 1600 was, however, a cut above the rest, and one of the most successful members of the MGA range. Despite its outstanding reception, a Mark II variant was introduced in 1961. The Mark II, with a slightly larger engine capacity and a higher gearing, upped the maximum speed of the 1600 from 101 to a recorded 103 miles per hour. Other changes included new horizontal tail lamps and a redesign of the radiator grille, which now featured inset slats. Production of the 1600 Mark II lasted for just 1 year and was the last of the MGA range. It was a very hard act to follow, but MG had already prepared themselves, producing a superb car that yet again went beyond the boundaries. The replacement came in the form of the MGB, which went on to serve an illustrious production period for the next 20 years. The MGA was a major step forward for MG, marking a new era in sports car design. For many classic car enthusiasts today, the MGA is a firm favourite, and it's no surprise to find it standing amongst the finest car collections. With its colourful character, revolutionised styling and valiant performance, the MGA is undoubtedly one of Britain's greatest classics. One of the most significant milestones for Britain's motoring history was the arrival of Daimler, the first series production car business ever to be established in the country. One famous classic Daimler was the Conquest. This particular model, known as the Conquest Century, was manufactured in 1957 and makes up the last generation in the range. This vehicle is a fairly recent investment for its current owner, but, as you can see, it's been well maintained, and retains the distinct quality and poise that Daimler became so famous for. The foundation of Britain's Daimler Corporation actually originated in Germany, where Gottfried Daimler patented an engine design in the late 1800s. Gottfried has often been associated with the invention of the first motor car. However, some people would dispute this, as there were others credited with similar achievements around the same time, Carl Benz being a notable example. It seems impossible to name one true pioneer, although it's certain that the Daimler engine helped shape the future of the motor car that we've come to know and love today. By the time the Daimler Corporation had introduced the Conquest model, all ties with the German company had ceased, with British Daimler functioning as a completely autonomous business. The Daimler name is a fundamental part of Britain's motoring history, and one of its most famous associations has been with the royal family. The first royal member to drive a car was Queen Victoria's son, Edward VII, and what other make could he have possibly chosen than a Daimler with royal family's German ancestry? The famous marque went on to serve the royals for many years to come, further reinforcing Daimler's high-quality image. However, the question still remains: just how did the German name become so well established in Britain? The story begins with Frederick Sims and his encounter with Gottfried Daimler in the late 1800s. Sims saw a lot of potential in Daimler's engine design and soon snapped up the patent rights, forming his own company called the Daimler Motor Syndicate. Sims imported the engines for a boat-making business on Eel Pie Island, after which the boats were used on London's River Thames. It wasn't until Harry J. Lawson came along in 1895 that the Daimler engine found its way out of the water and onto dry land, with Lawson buying up the patent rights to be able to use the Daimler engines in his car-making business. But Britain wasn't ready for motorcars with such powerful engines just yet. As the law stood, it was illegal for a vehicle to be driven along a public road without somebody walking in front of it, waving a flag. This certainly wasn't a problem for the steam-driven vehicles, but for the new up-and-coming motor car, something had to change, and as luck would have it, the law was repealed in 1896. Just how much this was entirely down to luck is debatable, as Lawson happened to have some very influential friends in high places, which some believe played its part. Whatever the truth of the matter, the law change marked a major step forward for British motoring, and car innovation began to boom. It was quite a few years later, 1953 to be precise, that Daimler's Conquest range made its first appearance. As a replacement to the Daimler Consort, the Conquest was shorter, lighter and far more contemporary, leading Daimler into the new post-war era. Whilst modernising the image of the company, the Conquest also maintained an air of classic Daimler tradition, with its plush wood and leather interior furnishings, as well as Daimler's trademark upright grille. A short-stroke, 6-cylinder engine with around 2.4 litre capacity gave the Conquest a brake horsepower of 75. 0 to 60 was a recorded 16.3 seconds, and a maximum speed of 87 miles per hour was a very respectable performance for the four-door saloon. During the very first year of the Conquest production, another variant with roadster body was launched. Featuring the same engine specifications, but carrying a lighter load, the two-door sports number gave a top speed of 100 miles per hour. Again, in keeping with Daimler's traditional looks, the grille was kept the same however, sporting a fully alloyed body with bonnet air intakes and fashionable tail fins. The Conquest Roadster was a unique fusion between the old and the new, which some people considered to be quite a quirky looking package. The next Daimler model to be added to the range was a drophead coupe variant. The model featured here was the Mark II derivative and displays an effortless refinement of the Mark I. The Conquest Sentry, as it was known, made its way onto the market by 1954 and featured a very neat, power-assisted folding convertible roof. The Mark II was named the new Conquest Drophead Coupe, and it's believed that only 54 examples of this Conquest Sentry variant were ever completed. The Conquest cars became a popular series for Daimler and finally came to the end of production in 1957. By the summer of 1960, the company had been purchased by Jaguar, which continued to produce Daimler-badged cars until 1967. Even so, the famous Daimler name still lives on, continuing to be admired in some of the greatest classic car collections in the world. Having produced such models as the Conquest range, and as a pioneering force in the development of the motor vehicle, Daimler will always be remembered as one of the most significant names in British motor. One of the most legendary names in British car manufacturing has to be Jaguar. From its roots in the seaside town of Blackpool as a sidecar manufacturing business, to its cutting-edge designs and engineering of world-famous motorcars, Jaguar has truly helped to define Britain's classic car heritage. One of its finest creations is, of course, the Jaguar E-Type, an undisputably excellent car. This 1969 soft top fell into the hands of its current owner more than 25 years ago, over which time the car has received some serious attention. Today, this immaculate model is the perfect mode of transport for a pleasant weekend break and has been enjoyed in some beautiful settings, such as the scenic landscape of Ireland. The launch of the E-Type may have grabbed worldwide media attention, but the Jaguar name had been a globally recognised icon long before, and it's hard to conceive it could be called anything else. However, it was only after 20 years in business that Sir William Lyons, founder of Jaguar, eventually christened the company with the alluring name. Lyons first set up his business in 1922, called the Swallow Sidecar Company. 4 years later, he was also making coachwork. By the early 30s, he was producing his own cars, the SS1 and SS2. It wasn't until the 1940s that Sir William made the very wise decision to change the company's name. And in 1948, Jaguar Cars launched its fastest motorcar yet, the XK120. As it turned out, the XK range went on to become an intrinsic part of the Jaguar E-Type. The E-Type was launched at the Geneva Motor Show in March 1961 and stole the limelight, making front-page motoring news in no time at all. Faster than any other car on the road at the time, and in fact for many years to come, demand for the model soared to extraordinary heights, which were hard to keep up with. Along with its speed and stylish curves, the Jaguar E-Type also had an attractive price tag at less than £2,100 for the open two-seater, plus an extra £100 for the fixed-head coupe version. The car undercut its ultimate rival, the Aston Martin DB4, by a third. The three main components that make up the E-Type include the monocoque body shell, which is bolted onto the engine, and two subframes which are attached to the rear suspension. But from where did this iconic car of the 60s inherit its good looks? For this, we simply turn to Jaguar's 3 times Le Mans winner of the 50s, the D-Type racing car. The E-Type incorporated all its best attributes, utilising the wishbone and coil spring independent suspension, multi-tubular front chassis frame and its sensational sculptured body, as masterminded by aerodynamicist Malcolm Sayer. For power, Jaguar looked to the latest of its XR range and fitted the triple SU carburettor, 6-cylinder twin-cam engine with 3.8 litre capacity. A 4-speed Moss gearbox was used, which had been a feature in all Jaguars since the 30s. And although it was considered a little too elderly for the modern car at the time, today this is one of the features that warmly characterises the original E-Types. By 1965, the new E-Type 4.2 had arrived. Changes included the installation of an all-synchromesh gearbox, as developed by Jaguar, improved headlamps and brakes, an alternator, as well as a few minor interior trim changes. The engine was enlarged to the 4.2-litre XK engine, whilst the body remained the same. In Jaguar's efforts to make the E-Type more family-friendly, another version, the 2+2, was introduced in 1966 and incorporated more headspace and wheelbase length. This extension also gave enough room to provide an automatic gearbox. As ever, export sales heavily relied upon the market in America, but US legislation was getting tougher, and Jaguar had to replace the triple SU carburetors with twin Strombergs in export cars. The most visible alteration to the 4.2 was the switch from glass headlight covers to exposed lamps, but even more changes were coming with the advent of the Series 2 E-Type in 1968. The second series, 4.2, is particularly identifiable from the boot lid badge, larger wraparound bumpers and bigger tail lights positioned below the bumper. Air conditioning, accommodated by a larger mouth opening on the bonnet, and power steering became an option on all models, and visible enhancements included a more angled windscreen on the 2+2 to give an even smoother profile. Front lights on all models were moved further forward, and technical aspects such as the brakes were improved, and a dual fan was also incorporated. The last generation E-Type, the Series 3, also known as the E-Type 5.3, arrived in 1971. Bumpers were bigger, and the engine was now a 5.3-litre V12, but even so, this model was seen more as a grand tourer than sports car. The longer wheelbase of the 2+2 was used for the open two-seater models as well as the fixed-head versions, and flared wheel arches, a chrome grille, and the V12 bootlid badge gave the Series 3 its identity. A cluster of 4 chrome exhaust pipes at the rear centre of the car was also a noticeable feature. A few of these models were still fitted with the 4.2-litre engine, although on the whole, the Series 3, now with power steering as standard, gave a more refined ride. Leather replacing the wooden steering wheel was a luxurious finishing touch. The Series 3 may have been the last of the E-Type range to be produced, but it went on to inspire the creation of many other great cars. Jaguar's XJS took on a lot of the driving qualities of the E-Type, becoming a bestseller when the convertible version was introduced. A more recent Jaguar creation of 1996 was the XK8. Available in stylish coupe and convertible models and powered by a V8 engine, the XK8 encapsulates the finest qualities of Jaguar sports car making and is considered by many to be the true successor of the E-Type. Another stunning follow-up, the F-Type concept car, was made in 2000. The final 50 E-Type models were made in 1975. Each one was painted black and displayed a commemorative plaque with Sir William Lyon's signature. Staggeringly, over 70,000 E-Types were made in the course of its production life. A legend even in its early days, the Jaguar E-Type is a timeless masterpiece with worldwide acclaim. It is unquestionably one of Britain's greatest classic cars. Like so many of Britain's pioneering car companies, Rover began business in bicycle manufacturing, although, if truth be told, its evolution can actually be traced back to a sewing machine company in Coventry, founded by Josiah Turner and James Starley in 1861. James's nephew, John Kemp Starley, went on to create a bicycle company in 1877 in partnership with William Sutton. After only a short time, Sutton decided to opt out of the venture, although his decision may have been different had he known of the success the business would soon go on to achieve, with the company becoming one of the top cycle businesses in the whole of England. The company first adopted the Rover name in 1884, but it wasn't until 1904 that they entered into the production of motor cars. Before long, Rover had become one of Britain's largest car-making firms of the time, producing a wide variety of quality motors. The model that we have on display today is the Rover 12, and it was in production from 1936 to 1948. This saloon model was made in 1947, although such post-war models were still quintessentially pre-war in style. Today, this particular Rover 12 faithfully serves its owner on a regular basis. 8 years ago, however, it was a total non-runner and has undergone a grueling restoration process. The owner's next project on the car is going to be the paintwork. The 12 makes up a range of Rover models produced during the 1930s and 40s that were aimed at the middle-class motoring sector and proved highly successful in helping to build the company's reputation for producing quality cars. Before this, Rover's first production car had been a single-cylinder 8-horsepower model, a mainly cast aluminium structured vehicle designed by Edmund Lewis. This came in 1904, just 1 year after Rover's revolutionary step into making its first self-propelled vehicle, the Rover Imperial motorcycle. The 8-horsepower motorcar was soon joined by a smaller 6-horsepower model, as well as Rover's first 4-cylinder cars, the 1012 and 1620 horsepower models. The 1620, with the 3.2-litre engine, even went on to win the 1907 Isle of Man Tourist Trophy race, when driver Ernest Curtis sped to victory, reportedly finishing a clear 12 minutes ahead of the other competitors. The title was awarded to Rover for a second time, 70 years later, in 1977. The Paris Trophy Race is just one of Rover's many competition successes, among which Rover completed the adventurous mission of racing a Light 6 with the Continental Express Blue Train through France in 1930. The stunt ensured front-page headlines and the team's celebrity status. Just like other British car manufacturers in the first half of the 20th century, Rover developed a range of models with varying horsepower. A major reason for manufacturers offering this type of variety was the car taxation system, where the horsepower of a model would define which category of taxation the vehicle fell into. Rover's HP range extended to the 12 and 18 horsepower models, and later, to replace all previous ranges, two new revised cars were introduced: the 3.3-litre 18 horsepower and the 2.3-litre 12 horsepower model, designed by Owen Clegg. Clegg's creation was a particular success, becoming the backbone of Rover's developing range. However, things didn't always go quite so well for Rover, and after a low period during the 1920s, the company found itself in serious trouble. That was until the Wilks brothers stepped in, saving the company from an untimely end. With this new lease of life came such models as the Rover 10 and 12 that make up just a couple of today's cherished Rover classics. The Rover 12 was available in three variations: the 4-door saloon, 2-door sports saloon and the convertible tourer. Powered by a 4-cylinder 1.5-litre engine with overhead valves, the Rover 12, as its name suggests, had a horsepower of 12. The Tourer model was the last of the range to be released in 1947, just 1 year before the Rover 12 finished its 6-year-long production run. The impact of the war during this time inevitably had an effect on production of the Rover 12, not to mention car manufacturing right across the board. During the Blitz of 1940, Rover's Coventry factory on Helen Street suffered severe damage and all car production ceased. However, the company continued to put a tremendous amount of effort into making war munitions and equipment, expanding its work across 18 different factories. During this time, Rover was also approached by the Air Ministry concerning the development of the Whittle jet propulsion gas turbine. The company's input in the development of the engines was significant, although the project, even after passing acceptance tests, was handed over to Rolls Royce in 1942. However, Rover's experience of working with the gas turbine engine didn't go to waste, and a small team with Maurice Wilks as leading engineer began work on a secret project. In 1950, Rover introduced the Jet 1, catapulting into the record books as the world's first gas turbine-propelled car. From producing timeless British masterpieces such as the Rover 3-litre and the elegantly styled Rover 12, to developing some of the world's most famous and groundbreaking models such as Jet 1, the engineers at Rover proved that anything was possible with energy, style and imagination, making classic Rovers extremely collectible right up to the present day. Exuding sheer class and quality, the Bentley name graces some of Britain's most treasured classic cars, including the Bentley Mark VI. This black and silver model is just one fine example that's still enjoyed today, and displays the same elegance and quality it would have done in 1949, when it first left the gates of Bentley's factory in Crewe. It is with thanks to the current owner's staggering 22 years of hard work and care that we have the pleasure of viewing such an exemplary specimen today. Before the announcement of this post-war model in 1946, the development of Bentley Motor Company had experienced its fair share of ups and downs, with 2 world wars and financial troubles to pull through. However, the ambitions and talents of one gentleman made sure nothing got in the way of producing the highest calibre of cars. Walter Owen Bentley, or W.O. as he was widely known, found his talents for engineering as a 16-year-old apprentice at the Doncaster Locomotive Works. After that, he spent some time as a general assistant at the National Motor Cab Company in Hammersmith, before embarking on a joint venture with his brother selling French DFBs. After the disruption of the First World War, the Bentley brothers resumed their business partnership, but this time decided to sell their own make of cars. However, even with famous names such as Gertrude Lawrence, Beatrice Lilly and Prince George becoming customers, Bentley Motors Limited were not immune to monetary problems, and by 1931 the company looked as though it would have to discontinue trading. That is, of course, until Rolls Royce stepped in. 15 years later, and the Mark VI arrived, proving a great success for all parties concerned. For Bentley's parent company, Rolls Royce, the new model marked a radical change in their car-making process. Previously, specialist companies who catered for individual customer requirements carried out coachwork. The body was then delivered to the main factory. With the advent of the Mark VI, however, a standard steel body was produced by Rolls-Royce themselves, crafted by their own coach workers. For the first time, not only was the engine and chassis combined on site, but paintwork, interior furnishings, chrome parts and light fittings were also completed at the factory. Today, the Mulliner Park Ward division of Rolls-Royce carries out specialist coach building work and is a fundamental part of the car-making process. Although modern technology is an important aspect, the division's most priceless resource is still personal craftsmanship. All car bodies go through a carefully designed process to ensure a smooth and seamless appearance, each one personally inspected for flaws, tapped into shape and hand-filed. Over a series of days, a coach painter layers primers, fillers and anti-corrosion treatments and then applies the more decorative details. The coach trimmer arranges, glues and hand sews the linings and woolen carpets, whilst other interior luxuries, including walnut veneer furnishings, are also fitted. Such expert skills are perfectly demonstrated in the Mark VI and truly define its exceptional quality. At least 14 British coachwork firms worked on the Mark VI during its production period, as well as a few continental companies. Even though private coach-building firms were becoming quite rare during this time, approximately 1/5 of Mark VI customers opted for tailor-made coachwork. Even so, customers who chose the standard factory shell would not have been disappointed with the elegant and well-poised body. The engine was taken from a B range that offered 4, 6 and 8 cylinder versions. The Mark VI featured the 6-cylinder engine with twin SU carburetors and 4.3 litre capacity. The engine also featured a new valve outlet, overhead inlet and side exhaust valves. As for suspension, independent coil springs support the front of the Mark VI with semi-elliptic springs to the rear. With a 4-speed gearbox, the Mark VI can achieve a top speed of 94 miles an hour, which was quite impressive for its day. When it came to interior furnishings, Bentley didn't hold back. Only the finest quality leather was used to cover seats and door panels, with plush woolen carpets to match, and a high-gloss walnut veneer throughout, all hallmark features of the British classic car era. Optional extras included a sunroof and rear wheel spats, and only very early models were without the chrome strip waistband and A-post fitted air intakes. Export destinations of the Mark VI were originally contained to countries within the British Empire, but a left-hand drive soon made its appearance, marking its potential for wider export success. Very few changes were made to the Mark VI over the years, the most significant being the larger 4.5-litre engine in 1951, only the year before its production ceased altogether. Bentley's revised version and follow-up to the Mark VI was the Model R, a near clone of its predecessor, although the back section featured a more spacious luggage compartment. Another company project produced the Bentley Continental R-Type, a sensational and extremely fast car that could reach almost 120 miles per hour. The Bentley Continental was promoted as the fastest production four-seater motor car in the world. Some very fine Bentley models have graced our road since the advent of the Mark VI, but the unique character and elegance of this fine classic have far from faded. With well over 5,000 models being produced, the Mark VI remains a pleasure to drive and has become a favourite for many. With its impeccable quality and archetypal post-war looks, the Bentley Mark VI has established a firm place amongst Britain's most admired classic cars. As one of the most acclaimed names in the world of motoring history, Rolls Royce has produced a succession of high-quality cars that make up a superb range of collectibles. One such timeless classic is the 2530 horsepower model. This touring saloon was made in 1937 and has been with the same owner for almost 17 years. In good mechanical condition when it was first purchased, the car has since undergone a respray and reupholstered headlining, and today is mostly used for weddings, with all proceeds going to charity. But the creation of such fabulous cars may never have happened had Charles Rolls and Frederick Royce never met, and in actual fact their first meeting very nearly didn't take place at all. By the beginning of the 1900s, Rolls had established himself as a successful car distributor and was on the lookout for a top-quality British car to sell. At the time, Royce was creating a new two-cylinder car, and a shareholder in his company, Henry Edmonds, decided to approach Rolls about the model. Rolls immediately concluded that the car would be just like the other two-cylinder motors on the road at the time, very noisy and inefficient. Even so, Edmonds eventually persuaded him to view the car, and the meeting turned out to be a brilliant success. Rolls had found the car of his dreams, Royce had found the right man to market his cars, and the rest was history. One of the earliest, yet most memorable Rolls-Royce creations is the 4050 horsepower model, more fondly known as the Silver Ghost, which marked a real milestone for the company. With a large 7-litre, 6-cylinder side-valve engine, a top speed of 50 miles per hour may not have given the fastest performance, but it made for a quiet drive and had an elegantly dignified character. It's no surprise to find that the Silver Ghost served a long and prosperous life from 1906 to 1925 and was hailed the best car in the world. Some wondered how this model of perfection could be improved upon, but The answer was quite simply to replace one icon with another, and so the Rolls Royce Phantom range was released. It was also during this time that the 2530 horsepower model made its first appearance. When the 2530 was released in 1936, it was very warmly received and made a fine replacement to the older 2025 horsepower. The new model had an increased engine size from its predecessor, taking capacity up from about 3.7 to 4.3 litres. A top speed of 80 miles per hour was possible, although this could differ according to the type of coachwork fitted. But even though the performance of the car wasn't quite as efficient as the Phantom range, the 2530 demonstrated just as much engineering aptitude, not to mention integrity of character. A limousine, saloon and touring saloon type, as shown today, make up the range of 2530s, of which about 1,200 were made. Sadly, Charles Rolls never lived to see the creation of the 2530 and other such Rolls-Royce masterpieces, as in 1910 he died in a flying accident. In fact, Rolls had been an aviation pioneer in his day, and Rolls-Royce went on to play a major role in the First World War, developing over 60% of all British aircraft engines used. Royce was deeply disturbed by the loss of his friend and colleague, but with the help of Claude Johnson, the tragedy didn't affect the business. Johnson, who joined C.S. Rolls & Co. in the early days, went on to become an influential character within Rolls-Royce, playing a significant part in the company's growth following the untimely death of Charles Rolls. Affectionately known as the hyphen in Rolls-Royce, Johnson was highly regarded for his exceptional organisational skills and became the first secretary of what we now know as the RAC. Today, Rolls-Royce is a favourite with the royal family, and formal occasions are often attended in a Rolls-Royce. In 1919, the Prince of Wales, later to become briefly King Edward VIII before his untimely abdication, received his first Rolls-Royce. It was a Barker limousine, which sparked his lifelong passion for this exceptional mark. He went on to own no fewer than 10 Rolls-Royce cars, including the 20 horsepower Phantom 1 and Phantom 2. For some, the background to Rolls-Royce has come to resemble a legendary tale in itself. The famous name has even acquired a rather mystical connotation that dates back as far as the 1500s, when the famous prophet Nostradamus was making his predictions. From Albion's shore, the ancient name for England, shall come a marvellous conveyance, a silent carriage bearing the arms of Rolls Royce. This may not have meant a great deal to the people of the 16th century, but today some believe that the prophecy has been fulfilled. Rolls-Royce has become one of the most famous names in the business world and has branched out into many other sectors, even providing the market with a range of products from aerospace to marine technology. But the renowned name will always be associated with their exceptional classic car collection and remembered for models such as the 2530. These cars will remain a permanent reminder of the Rolls-Royce legacy and its status as one of the greatest assets in Britain's motoring history. And now we approach the end of our exploration into some of Britain's finest motor cars. The principle of what actually makes a classic car has been a long debated and sometimes contentious topic, and as we've run out of time, one that we won't be exploring right now. However, it's safe to say that the cars featured in today's programme are undoubtedly worthy of classic car status. Every weekend, hundreds of devotees proudly take their cars along to rallies and shows and immerse themselves in a world of timeless classics. But you don't have to be a committed fan to appreciate the splendour and craftsmanship of such models, and such events are an excellent outing for the whole family. A great day out for anybody wanting to get closer to the magnificent models such as those featured today is a visit to the Heritage Motor Centre in Gaydon, Warwickshire. Set in 65 acres of countryside, the centre holds the largest collection of British classic vintage and veteran cars in the world, with models dating from the beginning of the 20th century right up to the present day. As time moves on, and with growing concerns over the effects certain ecological factors such as exhaust emissions may be having on the environment, we could well be approaching a new era of the motor car, with alternative forms of power and new concepts just around the corner. And who can guess which cars of today will become the classics of tomorrow? The past 100 years of motor manufacturing has seen some extraordinary developments, and we can only wait to see what the next 100 years will bring. But whatever the future has in store for man's relationship with the world of motoring, we can be sure that one thing will never change: the timeless quality of the great British classic, an era that is most definitely here to stay.